So, I need to know, how many of you have tried to have a conversation about climate change, maybe with a certain friend or family member, and it didn't go that well? Look around. You are not alone. You are so not alone. We have been struggling to effectively communicate climate change for decades. I didn't even know what climate change was until I got to grad school, and a professor mentioned it in class. And I was like, well, time out. You're telling me humans are burning greenhouse gases that are warming the atmosphere and the surface temperature of the Earth, which could lead to ocean acidification, mass extinctions, and cataclysmic tipping points? Hello, why are we not talking about this? Why are we not talking about this? I started doing some research, going to conferences, presentations. I interviewed professors all over my campus. I went home that Thanksgiving and I said to my family, hey guys, I'm learning all this stuff about climate change. And they were like, chill out, Chicken Little, chill out. And I was like, what? How come no one wants to talk about this? And I thought, maybe they don't know how to talk about it. So in 2004, I started a project. I wanted to know what research was out there that explored all the nuances, the social, cultural, linguistic aspects of communicating climate change. Well, in the past 15 years, there have been 1,835 studies that span dozens of disciplines, data sets, perspectives. And from all of this work, all across the board, we learn that a lot of stuff doesn't work. So I'm going to introduce 5 of the worst offenders. 5 things, if you're doing these, please stop now. Number 1, fear, appeals, and doomsday prophecies have 0 lasting power. We can scare the audience, and they might get freaked out about that cataclysmic storm that's coming their way. But when they wake up the next morning, and the sky is blue, and the birds are chirping, and everything's fine, they go back to living their life the way they always did. Second, for nearly 100 years, journalists have been trained to balance their story. You've got one side of an issue, you present the support and evidence for the other side of the issue. When it comes to climate change, over 97% of actively publishing climate scientists agree that humans have been altering the Earth's climate for close to a century as well. But when you look at the news stories, 28% reflect that scientific consensus, leaving the audience to believe that the issue is way more controversial than it actually is. Also related is something many of my friends and colleagues have said, a failure to communicate. The problem with climate change is we're just failing to communicate. Let's inject more information into the audience. And I would say, how could we have a communication failure if we're not even speaking the same language? The language of science is not the language of public policy, politics, or of the public. One of my favorite studies from the past 15 years took common words used in international and national climate reports and surveyed an average American audience. So words that have a specific meaning for climate scientists have an entirely different meaning for the man on the street. Aerosols are spray paint, a spray can. Theory is just a hunch. If you're uncertain, then you must be ignorant in some way. You've got a manipulation in your experiment, clearly you've tampered with the data. If it is an error, even a margin of error, means that you've done something wrong. And consensus, you just share an opinion. Now, it takes a lot for a scientist to say that something is likely to happen, but for the public, it's probably not going to happen. So we've got a big language difference. And fourth, we have a philosophical difference. The whole beauty of science is not about proving things as certain, but discovering more uncertainty. So as they start to communicate their results with predictions that have lots of nuances or ambiguous scenarios of how things might play out, it leaves the audience just more confused. And finally, please don't do this at home, references to people and animals far away don't work. Cue the polar bear on the ice floe, stranded, starving, sad. We want to save it, and then we go back to our everyday life as usual. So, just as I was crossing the polar bear off my list of persuasive climate change messengers, I had an aha moment. And I don't know if I can really take credit for this. I think I was just in the right place at the right time. I was working in Colorado, and I was collaborating with the National Park Service. Senators John McCain and Mark Udall came for a special congressional subcommittee meeting at Rocky Mountain National Park. Part of their meeting included a tour of the park where rangers explained all of the natural resources they were monitoring in an era of changing climate. Well, the next morning, the headline of the Denver Post says every citizen in America should see what's happening here. John McCain went on to say, hey, I get it. Climate change is real. And every visit we make, such as we're making here today, argues that we need to take action. Take action. Take action. Yes, taking action. Suddenly, I knew I had to do a social experiment. Could we replicate the McCain experience? Could we take a group of people to Rocky Mountain, give them the same tour? So I did just that, working with a group of colleagues. And what we discovered was there are lots of influences on climate change that the park is monitoring. One thing that really changed the conversation was talking about the mountain pine beetle. Now, pine beetles have lived in the ponderosa pine, lodgepole pines, 27 other varieties of pines for hundreds of years, and their population has been well managed by cold winters. Essentially, midsummer, an adult finds a tree, it burrows in a hole, it lays a bajillion eggs under the surface of the bark, and then we get about 10 degrees below freezing, and it kills off most of that larva. So in the spring, a few hatch and move on, and the cycle repeats. Well, what we're seeing in Rocky Mountain National Park and other parts of the West is that pine beetles are having not just one life cycle in a year, but now 2 and sometimes 3. And a tree can't fight off that many beetles. So within 9 months, their needles turn red, then brown, and drop to the ground. Now, if you know anything about managing public lands, you can't have dead timber where park visitors are stopping, standing, or sleeping. This is Glacier Basin Campground in the heart of Rocky Mountain National Park. It used to look like this before 2009. As our guide was telling us about the management decision to clear cut this campground, I feel a hand on my shoulder. And I turn, and it's Tamra. And she's, I'm going to be generous, early 50s, professional from Florida who joined our tour. And I can immediately tell her face is red, her eyes are glassy, almost watery. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. We're at altitude. This has got to be altitude sickness, maybe a bee sting, maybe she's dehydrated. And just without thinking, we motion and we sit down at a picnic table. And before I can say anything, she looks me in the eye and she says, I wish I'd brought my parents. Okay. She's in her mid-50s. Her parents? Really? But I soon get it. I get it. She goes on to tell me that they had family reunions here every other summer, rode her bikes with her cousins, made sandwiches, went on hikes. And her parents, they're getting older, they're strong conservationists. They have a deep respect for public lands. But they also don't get climate change, and they certainly don't believe that humans are altering the surface temperature of the earth. And this led to this really rich conversation about families, science, how to manage public lands in an era of rapidly changing climate. And from that moment, my research changed. I spent the next half dozen years going to a couple dozen parks, from the Everglades in Florida to the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, from the Puget Sound in Washington State to the monuments of Washington, D.C., talking with visitors, doing this, having this conversation. In fact, I was in Alaska talking about climate change, and I finished my talk, and I am folding down my laptop, and one of the audience members walks up to me, a big guy. Just picture Paul Bunyan, flannel and all. You guys know who I'm talking about. 7 feet tall. And he gets low and looks at me and he says, Jess, you ruined it. Ruined it? What did I ruin? He says, you ruined Glacier Basin Campground for me. Now I can't go back there. He had just finished digitizing all of his father's photos, and here's one from the early 1960s. He went on to tell me that those family camping trips at Glacier Basin Campground in Rocky Mountain National Park was the reason that he spent 40 years of his career devoted to serving the National Park Service. So it's possible. We can change the way we talk about climate change. It doesn't have to be buried in doom and gloom messages or scientific jargon. I want to leave you with 4 tips, 4 things you can do today to change the way you talk about climate change. This happens to be the oldest rule in the communication playbook. You got to know who you're talking to. What do they care about? The way we see ourselves, our values, our attitudes, our behaviors shape the way we respond to messages. So know who you're talking to and where they sit, which gets me to number 2, which is to connect what they could care about with climate change. Climate change can be related to everything from public health, agriculture, energy independence, the economy, beer, hops production, wine, coffee. I mean, pick a thing. There's a climate impact connected. So figure out what your audience cares about and make the link for them. Them. I'm saying them. I don't mean a generic them. I really mean them. We are social animals. We vote how our parents did. We shop where our friends do. We are heavily influenced by those around us. So how can you use the power of the social connections we have to change the conversation? Finally, tip number 4, and I hate to end this way, but you guys know it. The climate change story, it's a downer. This stuff is depressing. You can only take so much, right? So don't lead with the climate science. Don't lead with the political impasses. Empower your audience. Research shows that Americans feel like this is bigger than them. They are helpless. Don't let them be helpless. There are hundreds of decisions that we make on a daily basis. Things we can do from planting a veggie garden to building a solar garden. We can make choices in our goods consumption and our energy consumption so that we can leave this beautiful, resilient planet for the next generation and hopefully for their children so they have a shot at a healthy, happy life here too. Thank you very much.